This old guy DIY video shows the final steps of the install of a Starlink satellite receiver at a friend's house. Today I'm up on the roof looking at options for a permanent Starlink installation. So one key thing is, where you look at this thing being plugged into the antenna itself, if you push down on this button right here, this end will come out. So that helps when you're installing it. Again, this little button here, push on that and you're able to withdraw the plug. What I'm doing here is checking this mount. Before I make everything permanent, I'm going to put the Starlink unit in there, plug it back in, turn the app on, and make sure that it doesn't have any interference. I have this thing temporarily mounted, and the lady who owns this house just went inside. She's going to plug in the Starlink unit, and then I should be able to run the app from here and make sure it has a clear view of the sky where it wants to be. It's plugged in downstairs. It says wait up to 2 minutes for it to acquire the satellites. So now I'll just sit here and watch this thing. I think it's pretty cool how it does its thing. It has a couple of little servo motors. There it goes. So it's doing its work on its own, just trying to establish the parameters apparently. Figure out where it's happiest. I tried mounting it on a 14-12 pitch roof earlier and it didn't like the pitch. It said that it was not close enough to vertical, so it wasn't happy. So I think now it's establishing that it's close to vertical, and I think it's going to tilt to the north, which is the left on this picture. It stopped right there. It says it's online, so we'll see. Just started moving again. I was a little slow with the camera, but I think that's going to be its final position. With it straight up, just facing the sky, it was reading about 60 megabits per second. I'll do a speed test now. So I mounted it here for ease, thinking it could see the northern sky. She was only getting a reading of 38, probably because of this garage section right here. So now I'll move over there and see what we get for a reading. Although this is not the prescribed technique, I drilled a hole right through the roof because I had access on the inside. This gives her the location she wanted for the Starlink unit. She was getting 150 megabits per second before I unplugged it to finish this job. But what I've learned now is the end that goes into the indoor unit, the router, is larger than the end that goes into the Starlink receiver. So now I'm going to pull this thing back apart, take that end out, go inside the house, snake it through there, see if I can wrap this up. These are the two ends of the cable. The one on the left goes into the router, the one on the right goes into the receiving dish. And just to confirm, the one from the receiver will go through that hole. So I'm going to go down inside the house now, push this cable out from the inside, and I'll be getting closer to being done. I'm inside the house right now. You can see the roofing and the rafters, and there's the hole I'm going to send the cable through. So when it came to mounting this thing, I took an old DirecTv adapter, and then I took my grinder and I cut 4 slots here because this is about 1 3/4 inches, and the unit on the Starlink is only 1.5 inches or so. So with this thing, then I'm going to run some electrical tape around the shaft on the bottom here to make up the difference. I'll stick it in there so it's tight, and then I have 2 hose clamps here that I'm going to tighten up to compress this where I slid it, and we should be in good shape. I'm up on the roof putting on the finishing touches for the Starlink install. So up here on top, as I mentioned, I used an old DirecTv attachment mechanism, and then here I had a couple of stainless steel hose clamps that I used to tighten this thing onto the neck coming down from the Starlink unit, and then I just wrapped everything here in black electrical tape. Then I ran my cable down here, and then I put a little drip loop behind that piece of downspout. Ran it down there, and I came up here, and I've never seen anybody recommend that you punch a hole right through the roof, but I did that because I didn't have access to the house here. There's a shower enclosure on the other side, so I couldn't get through there. So I decided to drill a hole right through the roof. Then I took this little piece of shingle and I cut it, and then when I'm done here, the shingle will be installed over this. But before I cover that up, I have a piece of this foam insulation like you put around a pipe. So I'm going to cut a chunk of this off, jam it in that hole, and then I'll use some of this, let's see, extra rubberized roof sealant. So I'll caulk everything up with that, and we should be good to go. So I set this thing up last night. She had speeds between 30 and 160. Where in a past time before this Starlink thing was up there, she was looking at anywhere between 1.3 and 7.5. So having this overnight with fast internet, she said, yep, this is something I want. Please finalize the install. So that's what I'm doing right now. Now I have the foam inserted in the hole. I'm going to get that rubberized caulk, put a generous coating of that stuff on there, put my little piece of shingle on, call it good. I put a generous smattering of roof cement on there. Now I'll move that little piece of shingle over, press it into place, and we'll be done. And this is what the finished joint looks like. So I just took my finger and smeared it around, almost so it looks like flashing.